welcome and good morning to everyone to this webinar where we will cover performance analytics and talk about some of the best practices and do's and don'ts on setting up and activating performance analytics in your ServiceNow instance. Before I get started, I would like to very briefly introduce my colleague Peter and myself. Peter, maybe you can introduce yourself briefly.
Yep, thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Goris. I'm a product manager for ITSM and DevOps, primarily focused in the EMEA region. But we're a fairly small team, so we try to cover all the areas as much as possible. And I've been working with Paul for a very long time by now. And I think, Paul, you have a quiz question for that one?
I don't, but I'm thinking I should have. So both Peter and myself joined ServiceNow as a result of the first acquisition ServiceNow ever did. So I don't have an official poll for that, but if you happen to know that acquisition, kudos to you. Anyway, it was 2013, so both Peter and I joined back then, and we're now both part of the outbound product management team for IT service management. So we have that PA background as part of that acquisition of the company back in 2013, which I'll not mention if people still want to guess. There we go. Right. Moving on to a few housekeeping rules. We will stay on mute for the most part of this session. There will be a Q&A after the presentation, so if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature to ask those questions, and we'll be either responding to them during the presentation or field them after the presentation. If you have any questions at the end of the session, feel free to introduce yourself and ask me questions. The session will be recorded, as I'm sure you have seen, and it will be shared on the ServiceNow community after the session. After these sessions end, we would love for you to fill out our short survey. We would love to hear what you think of it, and if there's any room for improvement, I'm sure there will be. We would like to hear from you on that. All right, that's as far as the housekeeping goes. First poll question, and this is more out of curiosity, but also maybe to adjust my presentation a little bit to the audience. Have you already implemented performance analytics? Answer 1, I have not started, but I'm interested in how best to get started. Answer 2, I'm in the process of rolling out PA within my organization. And answer 3, PA has been rolled out and is actively used within my organization. If you could please fill out that poll question. I'd love for you to hear. So, have you not yet started? Which is a good reason to join a webinar on how to get activated, how to activate and configure PA. But also if you're in the process of, or even if you have implemented performance analytics, those people are more than welcome, and hopefully you can pick up some of the things that we see as best practices within our customer use base. I don't think I have visibility into the incoming results, so I'm not sure if the results are coming in, and if so, if they can be shared. And there they are. All right. Fairly similar mix to the previous session we did a couple of hours ago. So a little more than half have not yet started. 1/3 maybe in the process of rolling it out, and then the remainder having it fully implemented. Interesting mix, and of course, welcome to all of you. We'll make sure that we have hopefully some relevant information for all of you. What I'd like to do is I would like to start off with a very short 2 or 3 slides on putting performance analytics into context, and then dive into how we see customers are getting most value out of using performance analytics to its fullest. And one of the ways to do that is to understand what drives improvement in your organization. So we'll talk about that. And then I'll do a short demo, and then there's one more thing, one more topic on how to find the relevant indicators within your processes before we go to the closing remarks. Right. So I'd like to start off with a slide that is a high-level depiction of a process, and a process consists of input, work, and output. Think of input into your process as requests, incidents, or any other form of required information or help from your employees that then needs to be worked on in the middle part and then results into responses, fixes, etc. Right. So an incident that is resolved leads to a resolved incident. Right. So that's how to look at this. And now what I want to plot on this process is where we would position performance analytics and maybe some of the other ITSM Pro products to have a bit of an idea of the context of what we're talking about. First of all, there's reporting. This is not the same as performance analytics. In most cases, what we see reporting is focusing on is the output of a process. I'll give you an example. If you look at a status report, the report that you'll be using at the end of the week or beginning of the week when discussing how things went, you're looking back at past performance and you're looking back at how do we do things like an SLA report or a status overview or even a financial report or whatever overview. It's always looking back at how do we do, and then based on that we can see if there's any room for improvement. If you look at performance analytics, it does that too in the form of executive dashboards, right? I'd like to see how we're measuring up against those objectives that we've agreed upon, but it also provides information that reflects to the work going on. Things like queues. Where is work queuing up? Where are my piles of work queuing up? And is there anything I can do about that? Is there any bottleneck in my process that I need to address? Can I set targets? And are those targets realistic? And can I measure against those targets? Does that make sense? You can even look at something called Spotlight, which is part of performance analytics, which I'll cover during the demo. That will help you prioritize work. So it will set prioritization across incoming work before the work gets into that middle part of my process. Right, so this is where PA fits in a little bit. And then there's more aspects, as I said, in ITSM Pro, things like classification framework in predictive intelligence, or things like advanced work assignment that can help predict the best possible assignment group for a piece of incoming work. Right, based on machine learning, we can say, well, this is the most likely assignment group. So that's focusing on setting fields before it gets assigned to the workforce. They're in purple, violet, similarity recommendations and other aspects of predictive intelligence, where we provide the agent with similar incidents or similar problems or related outages or similar knowledge base articles. And then there's virtual agent. Obviously, this is something that takes place before work gets assigned to the workforce, hopefully being able to self-service the requester, and in doing so deflecting incidents and providing a better service to the end user. Things like continual improvement management and vendor and service workspace, those are also part of ITSM Pro, and they take place in that work section where you define your improvements and you assign them and you monitor and manage them. And then last but not least, bottom right hand side, benchmark. Not a part of ITSM Pro, it's a opt-in, but I would like to not leave that unnoticed here, because it is something that really ties into measuring performance, seeing how you're doing, and then with benchmark being able to compare that to how peers in your industry or your geography or your company size are doing. Right, so always good to compare and see where you're under or overperforming. So this is a little bit context setting. Now, one of the things that you may have picked up is that we would like to focus on the work. So the question, where does a modern experience take place? If we really want to have that modern experience for the end users, we should focus on things that we can influence, not necessarily reporting on output. So one of the reasons that, one of the aspects of performance analytics that is really important and relevant in understanding how we're doing and where we should impact performance is the context of time. So so you can see a horizontal axis at the bottom depicting time. That's today +1 +2 days or weeks or whatever time frame you want. And then there's a score. Let's assume that that's a customer satisfaction score of 0 to 5. Right? And if we're measuring where we are now, we can see we're currently today at 3.2-ish, 3.25 maybe. But that doesn't tell us very much other than we're currently at 3.2. Is that good? Is that bad? Are we improving? Are we declining? Is there anything we need to do? we really can't tell based on that one data point. If we now bring in trend information, we can see that, oh, historically we were lower, but we also were close to 4. So whatever we did there, we might want to have a look at. But now we can put this into perspective, and 3.2 is not that bad, even though I think we can do better. We can probably get to 4. Right? So we can now set a target saying, I'd like to be at 4. We can identify a gap and extrapolate a trend view that shows if nothing else changes, and there's various algorithms to support this predictive outlook, then we'll get there in 4 days or weeks or periods from now. Right? The big question, however, is there anything we can do to get there faster? And this goes equally if the trend would be downwards, right? If you would see, well, if nothing else happens, then we're hitting rock bottom in terms of customer satisfaction in a few days. What is it that we can do? Right. So in terms of terminology, the first bit is often known as descriptive, extrapolating is known as predictive, and prescriptive is where you prescribe or suggest measures for improvement. Now, in order to understand where you can find measures for improvement, you need to understand how you can impact the performance or the behavior of people. And in order to understand that, we typically use the concept of leading and lagging indicators. And leading and lagging indicators can help you focus on what's important to drive or to improve your business performance. Now, before I go explaining about leading and lagging indicators, second poll question, are you familiar with leading and lagging indicators? 1, I have no clue. 2, I am familiar with the concept, but I would like to hear you explain that again, or I'm curious to hear how you figure that. And then number 3, we have deployed this concept in our PA implementation. Obviously, this is for those folks who are either in the process of implementing or have implemented. It would be interesting to hear about those experiences from those folks as well. So, familiar with leading and lagging indicators? No, not a clue. A little bit, but you can explain it nevertheless. And 3, we have used leading and lagging indicators in our PA implementation. I'm curious to see the results here. Ooh, no implementations with leading and lagging indicators, but quite a number of folks, almost half of the people in this session, or at least who have responded, who are familiar. Bit of a 50-50 there. Right, so that's good. I'll be more than happy to explain it to everyone. And this is not the one right way of explaining it, but this is our take on that and the way we use this terminology in terms of PA implementation. So, leading and lagging indicators are not a ServiceNow term. It's more of a generic term. You can use this also outside of ServiceNow. Right? So leading indicators are used, and lagging indicators. Well, lagging indicators are more output oriented. Right? So they focus on the output of a process, on the outcome of a process, you can say. They're pretty easy to measure. You can think of them very easily, and this is one of the reasons that they show up in a lot of reports. They're a bit harder to use as if you want to decide or if you want to impact the performance of a team or a group of people, right, or an organization. Leading indicators, on the other end, are focusing on input. They're a bit harder, not so much to measure, but to think of. So what's a good leading indicator leading towards the desired outcome? You'd have to give that some thought. But once you have them, you can use them to impact the performance. Right? So lagging indicators measure outcomes, and leading indicators drive behavior. Now, interesting. Let's see if we can bring up an example to bring this to life. Now, if I want to lose 5 kilo in the next 90 days, right? So 3 months worth, 3 months of time, very tangible objective. I can measure whether I'm on track by standing on a scale. And at the end of the 3 months, I can also measure myself and see whether I've met my objective. That's useful because that will tell me whether I achieve my objective or not. What it's not useful for is telling me what I need to do. If after 1 month I haven't lost a kilo or I've lost 3 kilos, I would like to know what I need to focus on in order to do better or keep doing that. Now, a leading indicator would be measuring how much exercise you do, for example, or more generically, the calories taken in and calories burned. Right? As long as you burn more than you take in theory, you would be doing well. You would be on your way to losing weight. Right? And we all have our own methods of doing that, but Generically speaking, if I would eat healthier or less and start exercising more, that's a leading indicator. I can measure that, and in itself it doesn't tell me whether I met my objective, but it probably gives me an indication that I'm on the right way. Or if I'm just eating cake every day, I may realize that I'm not on the way to losing 5 kilos, right? So leading indicator is input, and it tells me something about my behavior that I can impact. I need my lagging indicator still to see if I met my objective. Now, if I translate this example to a business example, right? Let's talk about service level management. If my objective is to solve 95% of my P3 incidents or cases within 5 days, my lagging indicator is easy because that's just measuring the percentage of P3 cases that were solved in 5 days. It's measuring the outcome of my process. Did I do well? This is what you'll see on an SLA report. Right? You met your objective because you achieved 95.7%. Good. Or you didn't because you only solved 92%. That's outcome. Doesn't tell me what I need to do. It's useful to know that I met or didn't meet my SLA, but what do I need to focus on? And here is where it becomes a little tricky. So what do I need to focus on in order to meet my SLA? Now, some of the leading indicators I can think of is I could look at my P3 cases or incidents that I haven't worked on for 24 hours. Right? If that percentage is growing, this is where trending comes in, I can see that it's less and less likely that I will meet my objective. Why? If I'm not working on incidents for 24 hours, I'm not solving them either. Right? So if I need to solve 95%, the lower that percentage, the higher my chances of meeting my objective. Same with the other one. Percentage of open P3 cases older than 4 days. If that's 0 or 3, that's probably good. If that's 70, probably not so good. There's a high chance of me missing my objective. This is where leading indicators help you focus on things that drive behavior in order to meet an objective. Leading indicators are input oriented. What am I putting into that process? Output oriented are my lagging indicators. Okay, so that's the concept of leading and lagging indicators. Now, we need to add one layer of complexity or precision to it. What's leading for one is lagging for another, and that's not nice because it would be much nicer if certain indicators were always leading and others were always lagging, but that's simply not the case. Now, let's have a look at this. Here's that little person again with the was it a phone, I think, a very old-fashioned one, looking at a lagging indicator. And the lagging indicator is an objective to improve Net Promoter Score by 5 points in 90 days. That objective can easily be measured by measuring my Net Promoter Score. Right, I can measure it now, can measure it in 90 days. If it's 5 points higher, I met my objective. What do I need to do in order to make sure I'll get there? So we start with the objective and we say, in order to improve my Net Promoter Score, maybe I should focus on lowering my mean time to resolve. Right? That's the assumption that if I get a resolution or a response earlier or quicker, I'm more likely to be positive about my Net Promoter Score. That's the assumption. Right? First time fix is another one. Right? Or a few other ones you can think of. Now, this could be the IT manager's objective. Right? The assignment is improve Net Promoter Score. This is what I'm telling my team managers to focus on, my team leads. Focus on lowering mean time to resolve. That then becomes an objective for the team lead, who then says, well, in order to achieve that, what do I need to focus on? Or maybe we should avoid cases not worked on for 5 days. Right? Again, that's leading towards that lowering mean time to resolve. Right? There's others you can think of, but that could be contributing to achieving that objective. Now you can see what is leading for the IT manager, at the top here, this one. That same indicator becomes a lagging indicator if you cascade that down one level below. So if you would depict that differently, here's the executive or IT manager, a service owner and a frontline worker. I could have that high level objective there, which will then lead to these indicators as being leading. I would like my people to focus on increasing first time resolution, lowering mean time to resolve, eliminate reaching out for more info, because people don't like that, right? I'd like to have a solution. I don't want somebody to ask me what exactly it is that I mean, to the extent that you can even eliminate that. Then that becomes a leading or lagging indicator for the service owner, and for that lower mean time to resolve, he or she can then tell her team to focus for the frontline workers on avoiding cases not worked on for more than 5 days, or avoid case reassignments. Why? Because that takes time. Well, I've read through the incidents, I've tried to find a solution, couldn't find it. assign it to someone else, maybe escalate it to second level. That person then needs to start from scratch again, so they need to read through it, need to understand what it is. So if we want to lower mean time to resolve, avoiding case reassignments or incident reassignment is a good indicator to focus on. Right, so if you translate that to a performance analytics implementation, a high-level objective score could be a single score on a executive dashboard, or maybe on a mobile device. Right? You can, obviously, using the ServiceNow app, we can very easily show PA scores there as well. In order for the service owner to get an understanding of the relationship between lagging and leading indicators, we have something called a workbench widget. I'll show that in my demo how to use that. But that was designed more or less for this purpose, to get an understanding between an understanding of the relationship between leading and lagging indicators and the ability to take action on them. And then there's something called Spotlight. Spotlight will help your frontline workers to focus on the work that is most important, in addition to priority setting. You can use these leading indicators to drive which incident is more important than the other. All right, so in summary, leading and lagging indicators, leading our input, lagging our output. We need leading indicators to drive behavior. We need lagging indicators to know where we are and whether we're meeting our objectives. All right, that brings me to my live demo. Right, so I'm switching to a PA instance or a ServiceNow instance with a set of nice dashboards. So I'm looking at a CIO overview dashboard, and this is just a nice dashboard, a bit of a show-off dashboard actually, to show sort of all sorts of visualizations, but it's relevant information. What you'll find here is not a lot of detail. You don't see overviews of open incidents, right? It's just very high level. This is about availability and reliability. If I zoom into IT service management, I can see again service availability. I can see customer satisfaction score. That's at 7 score that I saw earlier. See a bit of trend views, but not too fancy. I can see a breakdown of my services by service. So I can see a bit detail if I want to. But this is really somebody who's just interested in, are we doing well or not? And you can see by the color coding, some things are not going that well, others are really going well. You can see some trend views here, and if I want to, I can zoom in, I can get more detail, but most executives won't. Right. So if we then switch to, I was going to say the man in the middle, but the process owner, right? The incident process owner can see a dashboard that shows a bit more detail. Here I can see open incidents in real time. That's the actual time here in the Netherlands, 1825. In red, right? There's more than what we wanted to, and also the trend is up, so we can see that we've had a lot more incidents since the previous time we measured that. First score resolution, that's green, that's good, but only just. See, that's just above target. And there's a trend view here on incident age and backlog. Now, the incident age is that line, right? Backlog is the blue area. Blue area is fine. It's going down a little bit stable here, so not too much going on. Incident age, however, is going up. Incident age was 3.7 here. It's currently gone up to 12 days. That's not a good sign. Here's where you can see that there's more of one way to looking at the backlog, right? Yes, my incident backlog is going down. That's good. Maybe we're focusing on easy to close incidents if my incident age is going up. Maybe not. Maybe we just forgot about a few incidents. We haven't activated that auto close for all of our incidents. So maybe some of them are just left there and we just forgot to close them. But I want to know what's going on. So if I zoom in, I can get to the incidents, etc. But instead of doing that, what I would like to show you is the workbench widget that I mentioned. So here under state analysis is an example of a workbench widget. First of all, I'm looking at incidents by state. So I'm looking at my process here. There's one incident in state new, 46 in progress, 117 on hold, etc. And obviously these states, this is all configurable. If you have different states or more or fewer, then that's something you can easily configure. Now I'm looking at the ones that are on hold. That's 117 on today. If I hover over that, I can see on March 18 that was 165. Here was 94. Was it currently pretty stable, right? So again, you can see that that backlog is not changing a whole lot, right? Maybe a little bit, but not to worry about. On the other hand, if we're looking at the average open age in that same period, that is currently 22 days. Right? I'm looking at the incidents for this state. That's why it's a different number than on the previous tab. 22 days. That used to be 3 or 4 days. So something's going on, and I want to find out what is going on. But first of all, if I go back to scrolling over this view here, if you look closely, I'll keep scrolling. If you look closely to the smaller widget, you can see that they move at the same rate, the same speed. If I now fix this point, for example, so I click and I fix this in time, I can see the values of March 14th. Average open age was 5, average reassignment time was really low, average last update age was pretty high, etc. So I can see the relationship between those, what you can call leading indicators, right, and the actual state of the work, the number of open incidents. Once more, I can see the number of open incidents broken down by priority, and I'm currently looking at the number on March 14th. Or if I go back here, look at March 2nd, those numbers will change to the actual numbers that were on hold on that day. Some of those may be closed, maybe all of them are closed, but on March 2nd, that's the number. If I want to see the actual records, I can see the actual records here. So the 83 records of incidents that were on hold at that point in time, you can see here, if I scroll down, you can see that that's the whole list of incidents, and that's the total number of 83. Right? So I have a historical timestamp of the number of incidents, the breakdowns, and the underlying records of those incidents over time. I can also switch to showing that by category, right? So I can see the numbers of incidents on hold by category. But also I can say, well, let's go back here. Maybe, let's see here, maybe at that point in time. Now look at my average open age. That was 18 days. I can see 47 of them were requests. But if I click on this leading indicator, I can see that same breakdown, but now showing the average open age. So what is that telling me? It's telling me that on April 14th, the average age of open incidents in state on hold for inquiry was 30 days. And that's the highest number, and then network was 22. Let's filter that down by assignment group. Right? So now I can zoom in, I can see the highest number here was IT securities. The average was 18, but IT securities were doing particularly bad. You can see the upward trend in all of them, so something is going on there, but you can see the outliers by just zooming in. So this gives you a lot of information, and then obviously you can drill in to see that detail of the 24 days for that assignment group. Right? So here I can get here I can do all my detailed analysis of that trend over time. Right? If I want to go down to the incidents, this is a calculated indicator, so I need to open up the formula and I can find which incidents were on hold and were taking so much time. Right, so this is why this is called a workbench. It's not a report, it's not just a dashboard. It's actually something that you can use to improve the performance of your organization. Right, and it really shows the how leading and lagging indicators can be visualized together, and you can see the added information it brings to you. Right, and it also allows you, because of leading indicators, to improve performance, because it's very easy to pinpoint the outliers and take action on them. I can literally go into the incidents and say, I need to reassign that, or I want to put this at the top of the list again, or just make a comment saying, why is this not being closed? Right? Or maybe understand why it is on hold because it's related to an open problem, etc. Right? So all of that information is available at my fingertip, but now is driven by those leading indicators. Right. So that was the incident process owner. Now if I go one step lower in the hierarchy, I get to the service desk worker. Service desk worker, this is a tab that says prioritize work. And the reason that it says prioritize work is that next to some indicators, 6 critical incidents, and some trend views here, and maybe a breakdown for assignment groups, I can see that for some reason this incident has a score of 2300. Now what does that score mean? Now if you remember the picture that I showed in my PowerPoint, where at the lowest level we can say we need to focus on maybe avoiding tickets that have been open too long, or maybe we want to avoid reassignments, right? Those are all parameters, characteristics of an incident that you can use to put a weighing factor on specific incidents, on all incidents, right? So in this case, open incidents not updated for 5 days. So this is something we can easily measure. Once that is the case for a specific incident, we'll give that incident 100 points. This one has user impact. We'll give that 1,000 points. Not updated for 30 days, another 1,000 points. It's a P2, 100 points, etc. And obviously you're free in determining your criteria and your weighing factors, but ultimately that leads to a total score of 2,300. And the only purpose for that score is to tell its its relative importance against other incidents. So if you think back of my PowerPoint where it says these are the leading indicators at the worker level that we want to focus on, those are the ones that once you've determined them, that can determine the score of those incidents. Right? If you want to avoid reassignments, anything that's been reassigned more than 2 times is added, give it 500 points. What that will do is it will show it up higher in the list. So you can say, well, this one is a focus one. I need to focus on that. I want to make sure that now we get this resolved and not reassign it again. Been open for 30 days, that's way too long. Give it 1,000 points, etc. So that's how Spotlight works. Spotlight is a part of Performance Analytics. It's also one of the best kept secrets within Performance Analytics, but really powerful and useful for those organizations that are actually making use of it. All right, so quick recap. I talked about leading and lagging indicators. I showed you some of the dashboards. But you also want to know a little bit about how to set up performance analytics, right? That's also the title of this workshop. So let me take you through some of the basics. So all the things that you see in that score, this one, for example, number of critical incidents, or the mean time to resolve, or whatever, average age, or backlog, all of those are indicators. And indicators can be defined, and per indicator you can define what and how you want to measure the scores. Right. Now, luckily, you don't have to invent the wheel and invent everything from scratch. We have a couple of hundred KPIs, I think, or indicators out of the box that are out there. So definitely advise you to leverage those. But let me take you through some of the basic steps. So what I have here, let me open up my menu. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm looking at what is called automated indicators. Right. So this is a list of indicators that are collected automatically. So for all the indicators that I want to collect automatically, this is 99% of your indicators, right? You don't want to manually collect anything. So number of open incidents. Ooh, if I type that in, yeah, the first score, that's the number of open incidents. I'll take that as an example, right? This one has almost 500 indicators, so that's quite a lot. We would definitely not advise you to start off with 500 indicators. So what's in that indicator? The indicator definition obviously contains a name and a description, which is for the end users to understand what it is that we're measuring, and also maybe in this case how we're defining an open incident. Well, open incident, resolve date is empty, right? That's what we define as open incident. So then what else? Some of the characteristics like minimized, we would like this to go down. So if this trend goes up, that's a red arrow up and not a green arrow up. We want to measure that in numbers, not in percentage or in US dollars, so etc. So, and then here's probably the most important field, right? The indicator source. So this is the definition of what we want to measure. The indicator source, let me open up the indicator source, is defining where we and for under what conditions we would like to apply the measurement. Right. So what we're looking at here is we have a facts table incident, meaning we want to reach out to the incident table and count the number of incidents that match these conditions. Right? It needs to be open on today or before today. Anything that was open yesterday and still is open, that's fine. And resolved as empty. That's also why we put in that short description, right? So anything that's not resolved. So we want to measure that, and I'll get to this one in a second. But first of all, if I would measure that now, go to my incident table and look at what was opened either today or before today, resolved as empty. That could be 44. Currently we have 44 incidents. That number 44 is then captured and stored into a separate table in ServiceNow. And that separate table is a big collection of numbers. And those numbers are the basis for my charts. We'll get to that in a second, but just so you know, that's what it does. So data collection does a count on the incident table for all the open incidents whatever result it comes back with, puts that into a table. Now, what does resolved after today mean? Right? That's very strange because I'm not sure when this will be resolved. Now, the example I just gave you is I'm going to collect this now. Probably want to collect it again tomorrow, so and the day after. That's how we build a trend, right? So we do a daily collection of probably all the indicators that we have, or at least most of them, and then all those scores, those results, will be stored into that separate table. Now, what if I want to collect historically? What if I want to go back and say I want to know how many incidents were opened 5 days ago? Well, that's a bit different because we really don't have that view anymore now, right? Because it could be resolved now, but it was opened 5 days ago. That's where this comes in. So in a historical data collection, I'm going to see an incident that was opened on the 12th of March, but closed or resolved on the 14th. That counts for an open incident on the 12th, because the resolve date is the 14th. It also counts for an open incident on the 13th, because that's still after the 14th when it was closed. That's still after the 13th, but it's no longer an open incident on the 14th. Then it says no, result is not after today, and it's not empty. So that at that point is no longer an open incident. So we support historical data collection, and that's the reason that we have these conditions in that indicator source. Right. So I mentioned data collection. Let me show you what data collection looks like. Just picking one. I mean, this is way too many. You would never have had enough for the data collection jobs, I would guess. So this is a daily collection job. It would have to be set to active to actively collect data, and it would just for the past day it would it would collect the numbers for all of these indicators. So a job is a collection of indicators and then an indication whether you want a daily collection, or maybe this is a one-off and you want to do a historical data collection. When would you do that? Well, probably at the beginning of your implementation, so you'll have some history. You don't have to wait 3 months to have 3 months worth of trending. You can go back in time and do a historical data collection, or maybe in the case that you say we have a new indicator, and rather than just again waiting 3 months to get some trend information, let's go back and just for that one indicator or maybe a few do a historical data collection. Right. Once you have that, you can then say, okay, now I have all those scores. What about formula indicators? What about the average number of onboarding activities? I'm not exactly sure what that means, but anyway, so the way to set this up, a calculated indicator, is just as easy as you would set up a calculation in Excel. I want to divide cell A2 over cell B7. That's really what this says. So you can pick from a list all your indicators and say, I would like to divide this indicator over that indicator. And then the result can be percentages, can be a number, can be a score, can be anything. Right? The good thing is about formula indicators, you don't have to do any collection. Right? It's always based on either automated indicators that hopefully have some data against it, or you can use formula indicators on top of other formula indicators, and again, you would probably have your data immediately. Right, so indicator source, data collection to collect numbers. Those numbers are stored into a separate table. What about visualization? How do I create a visualization in a dashboard? Let's go back to that CIO dashboard. Right? And in this case, obviously, I have tons of indicators and tons of data, but let's assume you have at least a few indicators and some data. You can then very easily say, I would like to add a tab. How did I do that in the previous session again? Oops. I thought I could add. Oh, you know what? Why don't I just add a widget here on this page? Don't even have to add a tab. So I'm going to add a widget, a performance analytics widget, and as you can see, you can add all sorts. You can add reports, you can add content blocks, gadgets, all sorts of elements from the ServiceNow platform, feeds, etc., that you can enter onto a dashboard. But for now, let's just go with performance analytics, one of the performance analytics widgets. I would like to use a time series. Here's a workbench widget that I showed earlier. Let's add a time widget, and let's not use any of the existing ones. Let's just create a new one. Right? I'd like to create a new one, and there we go. There's my new widget. Now, in that new widget, I can configure what I would like that widget to be. I would like that to be the number of new incidents. Number of new incidents. There we go. And I would like that to be a time series. Present as a column chart. Submit. Let's see what that does. There you go. As my time series of new incidents. Now this is all as I said, a representation of the collected numbers that were stored into that separate table. But in this case, this doesn't really give me a lot of information because I can't see a trend. Right? With open incidents, that's a lot more stable. New incidents, well, people don't work over the weekend or working from home, but not too hard. Then you don't see a lot of new incidents in those 2 days. So why don't I just add, a time series for that. And let's take the 7-day running average. Now, what it does is it represents the same data in a different way. Note that you don't have to collect the 7-day running average numbers because you're just collecting daily scores. But a 7-day moving average is a calculation that I can apply to those daily measures for representation purposes. Now I can see a trend. Now I can see that there was a peak around 14th of March and went down around 28th of March and it went up again. Right. This is how easy, and then I can obviously resize that and drag and drop and make a total mess of it, but I can very easily create my dashboards. And the one below here, that is a combination of indicators. Very simple, go in and say next to the number of new incidents, I would like to add a widget indicator, add the number of closed incidents. Right. I can see that in the same chart. Right. So visualization, I would say, is technically the easy part. Obviously the challenge is to keep it simple and make sure that it's understandable by the end users. All right. So hopefully that gives you some idea of some of the basic principles. Indicators, indicator sources. I haven't touched on breakdowns, but I'll cover that next week. And then formula indicators and how to display some of the information on a dashboard. We talked about leading and lagging indicators, and I would like to add one more angle to that, because I've made it very easy with my weight loss example, but how do I go about finding leading indicators in my existing processes? Right? And I would like to take an example of an incident process. Right? Here's where the customer or employee that can describe an incident or a problem will then be going up to what is called first level support. That's that gray swim lane. And if they can solve, that's all good. That's the green path. If they cannot, then it gets assigned to second level support. That's that white swim lane. They can do some assessment and analysis. And if they can't solve it, can even go up to third level. Eventually, there will be a solution for the problem that was raised. Now, there's a couple of flows you can think of that can flow through this process. First level can solve and the customer is happy. That's the best possible flow. You can't wish for anything more smooth through that process than this flow. Not too much work, only one person, minimum amount of time. A different use case is when first level cannot solve. Assign that to second level can solve, and the customer is happy. Not too bad. This is what the process was designed to do. A bit more work though, 2 people involved now at least, and a bit more time. And then there's the process you don't want, right? The use case you don't want, first level can't solve. Let's assign that to second level. Oops, wrong assignment. Let's reassign that. Oops, the second level needs additional information, so it needs to contact the customer. It turns out we can't solve that. We need to get third level support involved. Need some additional information. Oops, that's not what the customer wanted. This time first level can solve. And there's my resolution. As you can imagine, a lot more work, a lot more people involved, taking a lot more time. Now, what does this have to do with leading and lagging indicators? If you want to measure the efficiency of a process, a good starting point can be to look at the decision points within your process. All the options for a token to either go left or right. So the percentage of incidents, note the percentage, not the number, but the percentage of incidents that are assigned to second level support. And for those that are assigned to second level support, I would like to know which category they were, which type, and is there anything that we can do to avoid that, right? Because that's an inefficiency. Any reassignment that we need to do. Which incidents typically are reassigned? Where do we have trouble finding the right assignment group? Are there specific incidents? What percentage, and if so, which ones? We always need to reach back to the customer, etc., etc. So those are good leading indicators to if you want to focus on the efficiency of a process. What's a lagging indicator? Just measuring how long it took, right? Not looking at what's going on in the process, but measuring the outcome. My very first slide there, right? This is the outcome of my process, and that tells me it took 3.2 days on average, right? And you can split that down by specific incidents. That's telling you how you did. What you need to do in order to improve. Look at those leading indicators inside the process. This is a good starting point to get after those leading indicators. All right, we're coming to the end of this session. I would like to share a few more things with you. Not too much detail, but this is a high-level view of what a rollout could look like. Right? There's an initiation phase where you define why are we doing this. So define the vision. Right? Are we just trying to replace our existing reports, or are we actually trying to get a grip on where we can improve our processes? There's performance and analytics readiness checklist. I'll make sure that you'll get the links to those checklists and readiness guides. Then it's time to start planning the activities. So definitely review the available out-of-the-box content. Chances are that the first 25 indicators that you think of are part of that out-of-the-box content. Right? This is based on years and years by now of customer experience. So very likely that you'll find your indicators in there. And if they're not, you can easily build them. But don't start by building them from scratch. Always look at the out-of-the-box content first. Execution phase. This is activating the plugins, execute data collection jobs, etc. Get all of that set up to deliver in the next phase the results. And then set targets in the last phase. You could wonder why that's not in the first phase. Why are we not setting targets in the beginning? Well, one of my earlier slides said, well, unless you have a good perspective on how you're performing, it's not very realistic to just set targets and say, I think we should do better, and this is how much better I would like us to do. Right? So get an understanding of how you're doing, and then set realistic targets. Maybe 5 or 10% better than the average of the last 3 weeks, something like that. Right? But you need that insight first. This is an example of a page of the readiness guide. So that's a really good checklist. Again, we'll make sure to share the links to the readiness checklist. The out-of-the-box content, I cannot emphasize this enough. Don't start from scratch. Don't think you are that unique that none of the out-of-the-box content applies to you. Very likely that we have thought of something similar, maybe worded it slightly different, but there's a lot of good content out there in the out-of-the-box content. Now, another decision that you'll have to make for those of you who haven't started yet is, are we going to self-implement? Are we going to make use of partners? Or are we using ServiceNow's expert services? And all three are possible paths to success. They're different paths. Well, I always say it never hurts to get some advice in the beginning of your implementation. Right? You better start off on the right foot. But if you decide to self-implement, definitely leverage all of the information in our community. There's a community of people who have probably come across the same questions, or have run into the same problems, or know of the pitfalls, and definitely make use of that wealth of knowledge out there in the community. Training sessions, yep, we'll probably provide you with some links around the right training availability as well. And then partners and expert services. So my next, and this is really out of curiosity, we're not using this information for anything else than just the discussion that we're having now and next week. What are your plans, or what is your current path? Are you looking at self-implementing? Are you working with a partner, or are you planning to work with a partner? Or are you thinking of maybe using ServiceNow services for deploying performance analytics? So again, we're not doing anything with this result other than just fulfilling our curiosity to see what it is that you are doing. Right, I'm not sure if there's any results. It's a bit quick, maybe a bit more time. Oh, I can see. There we go. Self-implementing 75%. 3 out of 4, and partners. Right. Okay. As I said, all paths can lead to success, but definitely reach out to others and learn from others through the community, regardless of what path you will be taking. And then again, we really don't have an advice there, but leverage all the information and knowledge that's out there. All right, that brings me close to the end of this session. I would like to draw your attention to next week's session. So next week, Thursday, March 24th, I see we have 2 sessions for the Americas. This is a round table session. So rather than me talking and you listening, this is not necessarily the other way around. I'll probably do a bit of talking, but it's more sharing of ideas, right? Any specific things you run into, some experiences you want to share. Think of this as a physical round table where there's a lot of customers sitting around the table sharing experiences. And then Peter and myself will be there as well to maybe help you in some cases or ask questions. And I would really like you to sign up for that. The link to sign up for it is shared in the chat. So it would be nice to meet everyone next week. Bring your friends. If you know of other people in your organization who would be interested in hearing more about performance analytics, by all means. So that's next week, same day of the week, Thursday, and there's 2 time slots there. Or is it 1 time slot? Let me see. I think it's 1 time slot, and one is Pacific time and the other is Eastern time. That's probably it. Hoping. Yep, I'm guessing that's it. All right. I'm sure you can figure that out better than I can. Last bit of information. Again, we'll share the links in the chat and we'll share this slide deck as well. Make sure to download the Performance Analytics Quick Start Guide. Visit the Analytics and Intelligence and Reporting Center. And make sure you reach out for the right training sessions that are offered. With that, we've come to the end of this session.